Welcome everybody to the March agenda briefing. We have all councillors here except for Councillor Holly. So welcome councillors and staff and members of the gallery. Agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item on the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming ordinary council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities, their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Records of apologies and leave of absence. As I mentioned, Councillor Holly is an apology for today. And there will be a request for leave of absence next week from Councillor Hitchcock. Declarations of members and officers' personal interest. Councillors, we've received a number of declarations. Are there any more? Should there be, while we go through the discussions, if you can just flag that. We'll move now into deputations, and I have 3 deputations for today. Can I invite Mr. Raymond Gartrell to address council in relation to item 5.3.2, which is the proposed structure plan for lot 401 Forest Highway. Mr. Gartrell, welcome. Thank you. If you just turn on that mic there, because we've got the button there. We might get Councillor Morley to... Thank you, Councillor Morley.
Cheers. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you. Madam President and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address you today in regard to agenda item 5.3.2. Kylie Shaw from Harley Dykstra will shortly address you in relation to a number of planning matters to do with my subdivision. But before she does, I simply wish to go back and outline some history to do with my land for the benefit and understanding of all councillors. There's quite a lot of history here going back 25 years, so I just want to give a brief overview of the history of the site so that councillors are aware how far this goes back and what's been happening over time. As I stated back in December when this matter came before council, I've owned this land for nearly 25 years. When I purchased the land, it was shown under the Bunbury Region scheme as urban deferred, in keeping with the surrounding Meadow Landing subdivision and residential housing which was taking place in stages at that time. My land was earmarked for similar style subdivision, and a number of consultants' reports and schematic plans were submitted to staff over time in accordance with the special residential zoning of the site. My plans were reasonably well advanced with staff for 50 special residential lots. The minimum area required under this zoning was 2,000 square metres. In other words, half an acre. At the time, lots were not required to be connected to the sewer, and instead, septic systems were permitted to be installed. The last stage of subdivision for Meadow Landing was completed some 10 to 12 years ago, I estimate, and was located in the southern point of the estate adjacent to the Collie River. I think that's known as Craigie Drive. Lots here were equivalent to 2,000 square metres or an R5 density. So recap, had the land for 25 years. When I purchased it, it was shown as urban deferred under the Bunbury Region Scheme, always earmarked for residential development. It was rezoned from general farming to special residential in keeping with the surrounding estate, with a minimum lot size of 2,000 square metres. Stayed special residential until the review of the planning scheme, and it was shown as R5 under the advertised new planning scheme. I believe that was, is it planning scheme number 2? Yep. So it was advertised as R5 under that new planning scheme. As we are aware, it was zoned a higher density urban development when the new scheme was adopted within the last couple of years, I believe, Madam President. So what has changed? What changed? The State Government Water Corporation Sewerage Policy of 2019 is what shifted the goalposts. The whole of the existing Meadow Landing estate is located in what is now described as a sewerage sensitive area. None of the estate would have been permitted to be developed today under current government policy. The subdivision of my land now hinges on the requirement to sewer the site. To do this, a sewer must come from the Treendale estate to the west under the Forest Highway. A recent estimate of cost to do this, for this alone, was close to $1 million. You then have significant costs to sewer the estate and provide individual connection to each of the lots. To suggest you would sewer an R5 density site of 2,000 square metres is fanciful, as it simply is not viable. A council decision to support this staff recommendation, which I believe is currently before you at the moment, could in effect sterilise the development of the site forever and a day. A comment was made at the council meeting in December that this matter of the sewer connection is a red herring. Believe me, it's not. The outcome of decision making on this site will hinge on the requirement to connect to the sewer. It is why the Minister for Planning, as part of the recent Shire scheme review, changed the zoning of the land to accommodate a higher density of subdivision. He acknowledged that in accordance with government policy, the land will need to be sewered. Hence the higher density in the new town planning scheme number 2. All written advice from relevant government departments indicates that there will not be support for the development of lots without sewer. Kylie will go into that a little bit further. Unfortunately, this matter has not been sufficiently addressed by staff in its advice to council. It has simply been, in my opinion, swept under the carpet, but it's a most crucial part of consideration of this whole development of this site. The decision of the Planning Commission to require sewerage connection will determine the future development of this site. Let's look at it hypothetically. Let's assume for the moment that providing sewage to the site was not required. In this unlikely event, that in itself would provide an answer to council to find a solution for development of the site which could satisfy all parties. An unsewered subdivision to an R5 density in accordance with the previous zoning of the site and the most recent subdivision of Meadow Landing to the south and the Collie River would provide an answer for a viable subdivision of approximately 50 2,000 square metre lots. The R5 density was proposed by Council in its advertising of the recently adopted planning scheme before the Planning Minister upgraded the zoning density in his adoption of the new scheme. As part of Council's recommendation to the Western Australian Planning Commission, could I suggest to you respectfully, in part, a resolution to the following effect? My words. Should the West Australian Planning Commission decide that sewer to the land is not required to be connected, then Council would support a subdivision of the site to an R5 density. End of the recommendation. So if the Council is saying, well, we believe in what the staff is saying to us, you read the report, the staff are saying that they don't believe that it needs to be connected to the sewer. All our advice from the relevant government departments is that it will need to be connected to the sewer. And that will play out when it goes to the West Australian Planning Commission. What I'm saying is, well, okay, if you're going to back your staff advice, there is a possible recommendation that you could make to the West Australian Planning Commission, providing the Planning Commission says that it doesn't have to be connected to the sewer. Well then, in accordance with the previous zoning of the site for nearly 20 years, special residential, minimum 2,000 square metre sites, the Council would support an R5 density subdivision, providing it didn't need to be connected to the sewer. That, I believe, is something that could be a win-win-win. Council, residents, owner. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen, because we've got to wait for it to go to the Planning Commission and they will decide. But that is something that I'm asking Council to realistically consider in making its recommendation to the Planning Commission. Finally, before I hand over to Kylie, I just wish to comment in regard to the plan that has been advertised for comment by the Shire. This is not my plan, and will never be a plan for subdivision of the site. It is simply unviable. I advised the Council and staff back in December that it would be a futile exercise to go down this track, and that I would not be submitting a plan for the site in accordance with the suggested R2.5/R5 density. I don't know where the 2.5 came from. It's always had a density provision of 2,000 square metres, which is R5. So all of them. And then there's been the approval by Council 10 or 12 years ago for the Craigie Drive subdivision of 2,000 square metres, all part of the Meadow Landing estate. Now, all of a sudden, even though the government advice is that we need to increase our density to provide for the housing that's necessary, the Council is looking at a recommendation from staff that they go backwards in the zoning density. I don't quite get that, but I'll leave that with Council. I believe the Shire gives the residents of Meadow Landing, with that plan that's been advertised, a false expectation. It seems okay for the owner-developer to be required to adhere to more and more government policies, such as connection to the sewer in this case. Change over time is inevitable, as the government struggles with providing sufficient land and housing within the state. I feel that responsibility should be shared across the board, with general public acceptance over the last decade of much higher density subdivision. I believe everyone's got a part to play here. not just the developers, everyone. That's clearly the way that the state government policies have been going over the last decade. Who would have thought 10 years ago that you'd be looking at subdivisions of 350 square metre green title lots? Not too many of us, I'm sure. But now that seems to be more part and parcel of the subdivisions that are considered and endorsed by the State Planning Commission, or West Australian Planning Commission. Finally, Madam President, I respect the Council's decision making in regard to this very difficult matter. I also respect the local residents' right to have their say. I would simply ask that Council looks at the big picture in considering both sides of the argument in making a fair and sustainable recommendation to the West Australian Planning Commission in accordance with the statutory framework. Most important, in accordance with the statutory framework. Thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Gartrell. Are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Hitchcock.
I actually have a question for staff. Does urban development actually have a density attached to it?
So through the chair, urban development is a zoning. It's zoned specifically for future use. So there isn't one attached to it. And that's under the local planning scheme number 2.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, this is to staff as well. My understanding was from reading the Liveable Neighbourhoods is that subdivisions of this type and density are meant to have public footpaths, shade, parks, walkable. They need to have access to public transport, those other items that stop people using their vehicles as such. And I think the distance given was between 400 and 800 metres from a shopping centre, for instance. So does this meet that type of requirement in relation to once East Treendale has been put in place?
So through the chair again, as you can see from the officer report, we don't agree that the proposed development will adhere to the Liveable neighbourhood standards. Hence, that's why we've put forward the density as R2 or R.5, in addition to submissions by the public, by the community.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr Gartrell.
Thank you very much.
Can I invite Kylie Shaw to come forward? Thanks, Kylie. In relation to item 5.3.2, the proposed structure plan at lot 401. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you. Madam President and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address council in relation to this matter. My deputation relates broadly to 2 matters. Firstly, the process undertaken by the Shire, in particular the decision to prepare and advertise an alternative plan that was not submitted by or supported by the applicant. And secondly, the compliance issues of the advertised concept plan within the current planning framework. The structure plan originally submitted by the applicant was prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Planning and Development Act and the structure plan framework. It was lodged as a formal application with the Shire. However, the concept plan advertised by the Shire was not the applicant's plan, but rather a plan prepared by the Shire itself, representing an alternative concept that had not been submitted by the applicant and which the applicant has not supported. This raises fundamental questions of process. The statutory planning framework provides mechanisms for local government to request additional information or seek clarification from an applicant where required. However, it does not provide authority for a local government to redesign a structure plan and advertise that alternative design as part of the statutory assessment process. The effect of this approach is that the community has effectively been invited to comment on a concept plan that does not form part of the formal application and which cannot ultimately be determined. This creates an unrealistic expectation that the concept can be approved. It is reasonable to ask why and under what authority or professional advice did the Shire choose to depart from the statutory process and prepare an alternative plan for advertising? The plan prepared by the Shire has no statutory weight, is not supported by the applicant, is not backed by any technical reports, and cannot be considered by the WAPC as a structure plan unless it is formally lodged by the proponent. The deemed provisions do not provide for a local government to insert itself into the process by preparing a separate plan and placing it before the WAPC for consideration. The WAPC can only assess a structure plan that has been formally submitted by the applicant. The second part of this deputation is regarding the suitability of the Shire's plan. The officer's report appears to proceed on the assumption that on-site effluent disposal may be utilised within the structure plan area. This assumption is highly questionable, and Ray's gone into that as well, given the known site constraints and being within a sewer sensitive area and the inconsistencies with State Planning's Policy 2.9. As working in the development industry, this is something that has been introduced since 2019, and it's critical to developments that we progress today. We just cannot ignore this policy. The alternative plan produced by the Shire staff is not supported by DUA or the Department of Health, while advice was provided by these agencies prior to advertising of the alternative plan. DUA has responded again, and you'll see their response in the schedule of submissions, to confirm they do not support development without sewer. While existing meadow landing lots rely on on-site effluent disposal, it must be recognised that this development was approved under earlier planning, health and environmental frameworks that predate the current policy and regulations. Given the current policies, it's highly unlikely that a subdivision equivalent to the existing meadow landing utilising on-site effluent disposal in an area deemed sewer sensitive with groundwater constraints would receive approval under the current planning environmental assessment standards. The alternative plan prepared by the Shire also appears to overlook several other fundamental site servicing and infrastructure constraints. No drainage reserves or drainage management areas have been identified, despite the acknowledged groundwater and stormwater management issues. A road alignment has been shown directly over the existing gas pipeline, which clearly raises concerns regarding safety and infrastructure protection. These omissions further illustrate the risk of preparing a concept plan outside of the normal applicant-led design process, where detailed investigations and technical constraints are properly considered. In closing, one of the key issues raised through this deputation is not simply the planning merits of the proposal, but the process undertaken by the Shire. The structure plan, as originally lodged, should have been assessed in accordance with the statutory framework without deviation. The preparation and advertising an alternative plan by the Shire raises legitimate questions regarding statutory procedure and also the appropriateness of the Shire's alternative plan. I respectfully request that Council carefully consider these matters when determining this item, particularly in relation to the integrity of the planning process and compliance with the deemed provisions. Our request is that the recommendation to the WAPC relates to the plan submitted by the applicant only. Should Council wish to see a lower density development, this should be reflected in written modifications, not by a concept plan that has no standing within the application and has obvious conflicts with the current policies and design practices. We would encourage councillors to reconsider wording in the modification schedule to allow flexibility to design modifications while, if a reduction of yield is warranted, rather than reference specific concept plan which clearly is not compliant.
Thank you,
Is there
Kylie.
any questions?
Are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Madam President. Can I just get or ask staff to address the issue of providing a plan or circulating a concept plan? And I've asked this question myself on several occasions. It is a highly contentious issue anyway. So can I ask staff why we submitted a concept plan that seems to be at odds with the regulations, please?
CEO.
So through the chair, the concept plan came about through state legislation. So the reasoning behind why the Shire officers have produced that plan. So that comes under the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015, Clause 19, and this is mentioned within the report. So the layout is indicative, it's a concept only. It doesn't make any reference to services and infrastructure. It's purely to address the community submissions, and that's within Clause 19. It gives the Shire officers the ability to put forward a layout. It gives the council the ability to vote and put forward that layout. So that is state legislation. It's available to every local government, not just the Shire of Harvey.
Sorry, can I respond to that?
No, we'll go to Councillor Coleman. Thank you.
Just to follow up, if I may, my understanding is that the local government may advertise the wording and/or intent without a modified plan. So that's my understanding. So could I just get a clarification, please, that the Shire is within their rights to develop a concept plan and circulate it without the authority of the landowner, please?
Mr Hughes.
So through the chair, as far as we read into the legislation, yes, we can. So if I can just add to that, the applicant's original proposed plan still carries forward. Their proposed application still carries forward all the associated information. All that we've done here is added to the information and given the Shire's response under the assessment. So everything still goes forward to the WAPC as the decision maker at the end of the day.
Thanks. Thank you for that, Director. My only concern was that we could advertise the intent, and we could advertise the wording, and I just wanted to be very, very clear that we're within the rules and the regulations that we could develop our own plan and advertise it to the public without the landowner's consent. My query, Madam President, comes from the fact that if I own land, can the Shire develop a plan and advertise it to anybody? I mean, what is the difference? So that's why I want to be very specific to say that we can have a plan and we can advertise it if it's not our land. So if you've answered the question, and if that's correct, thank you very much.
And just following on from that, Mr Hughes, is the fact that the applicant was afforded the opportunity to submit another plan, another concept plan, but did not take up that offer, and therefore that enables us, is that right, to put our own modified plan up for or out for community consultation?
So through the chair again, they did supply an amended modified plan. That didn't meet the requirements of council, being R2.5 and R5. Hence that we moved on from that and produced the Shire officers layout.
Thank you, Mr Hughes. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Bromham.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to address the information provided by the applicant in their report in relation to livable neighbourhoods. I had a look at it, and what I found was within the report you said you were within 1 kilometre of the shopping centre in Treendale, but that's only through line of sight. If I was a bird I could get there. But in reality, when you look at the livable neighbourhoods, the requirement by the West Australian Planning Commission is we talk about either road or foot movement. And that came to 2.6 kilometres, because I measured that on the map. So there's some errors there in relation to the way we're measuring things, which doesn't add to your argument. So my question to you is, when you look at livable neighbourhoods, how does your development fit into that process, given it's meant to be within 400 to 800 metres of a shopping centre, schools, parks and other things that make that work and reduce the need for the use of private vehicles because of the structures that are in place for public transport?
Councillor Bronwyn, that Livable Neighbourhoods is a guide. It was predominantly developed for the metropolitan area. It's often that we cannot address all of the items in livable neighbourhoods in regional areas. It's just a fact. If you measure a lot of distances to shopping centres, that just can't be met. So while that item can't be met, there are most of the other requirements in livable neighbourhoods, as in the circulation of traffic, the design of lots, the public open space, that is in accordance with livable neighbourhoods. In regional areas, as I said, it is very difficult to achieve complete compliance with livable neighbourhoods, which is a guide.
Look, thanks very much. I understand that, and my point was that you actually quoted livable neighbourhoods several times.
Yep.
So I basically went to that document and went, it doesn't comply totally in relation to what you're trying to do.
I'm not suggesting it does. Yeah. As I said, in regional areas, it is very difficult to comply with livable neighbourhoods of all items.
And when you talk about exits from the area, you're only providing 2, yeah, but they lead into 1. Now, I think this is something that is seen in a lot of planning in relation to subdivisions. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to write to the Minister and get some clarification on that, because from an emergency perspective, you've got to have 2 exits and they're not being used properly, as I'm sure you're aware. Okay.
Yeah. Is there a question, Councillor Bronwyn?
Yeah, so if you're only going to provide, that's only 2 exits that goes into 1, is my point. So how can you clarify as 2?
There are emergency access ways through bushfire regulations in Meadow Landing. You may have noticed the access onto the highway near the Collie River. That was put in place because of the 2 exits. When we can't provide 2 road accesses, it is acceptable to do an emergency access way. Main roads won't allow us access onto Forest Highway, a direct access. So we are having to go through the roundabout access that is there. They are doing some work on that, and as a developer, there would be a contribution to financial contribution to that, upgrade that access as well.
One more if I may.
Yes, Councillor Bronwyn.
Yeah. So when you're talking about livable neighbourhoods and we're talking about pathways and trees for cover and those types of things, and people having to walk, where are the pathways? Because when I looked at it, there are no pathways in that estate for them to walk out, and there's no buses or those types of things. And I said, I realise you can't cover everything, but certain things certainly should be covered, given that East Treendale will have a shopping centre and a school there.
The development on this site is not at the scale that we can provide a shopping centre or school, obviously. The catchments for the schools are at the existing Treendale School and the Treendale East School. Buses, as the population increases, the Public Transport Authority has the opportunity to increase buses, so that would be for the existing residents as well. But at the moment, the population in Meadow Landing possibly doesn't warrant the issue of buses. As the population increases, that is re-looked at, and possibly, certainly the school bus system has the opportunity to include a loop within that area to provide better access for all.
Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentations. I just wanted to just double check something that was said a bit earlier. Would I be correct if what I've written down, that if the WA Planning Commission determined that sewer was not required, then the developer would propose 50 by R5 lots would be developed? Was that correct?
That's what Mr Gartrell said, yes, yeah.
Okay, so if that was amenable to the other residents nearby, that's something that would be amenable to yourselves. Is that correct?
Yep.
And R5 is 2,000 square metres?
Square metre lot, yeah.
Okay.
Just on that, we have to prepare plans in accordance with the current policy, and that's why we have prepared the plan at the current density, because the current policies require us to connect to sewer.
Yep.
That area is within the sewer catchment area from the Water Corporation, and the government sewer policy has very recently been superseded by the SBP 2.9 that encompasses that requirement.
Yep.
So if I was to prepare a development without sewer in a sewer sensitive area, if with lots less than a hectare, the Department of Planning would come back to me and say, what are you doing? You know, this is not compliant. And this is a situation where we're going to get to, that simply not providing sewer is not in accordance with this policy, and we're going to get caught up on it. As I said, DUA have already provided responses to that, and Department of Health as well, both saying that you will need to provide sewer.
Thank you for that. I was just trying to find some middle ground
Yes,
on a way,
and I understand
on a way
that.
forward.
Yep,
I don't know what other residents are going to feel about that. So if council did put a motion forward along the lines that I just spoke about, and it goes to WA Planning Commission, if they then refuse it, as you're suggesting they would, does that just become status quo then, that the land just waits for the next plan to come forward? I mean, is it all bets are off then?
It is a risk that the land sits there undeveloped, which is a total, misuse and underutilisation of land that has been identified for urban development. And as I said, Ray mentioned about the current housing crisis. We need land. I get contacted, I'm not in sales, I get contacted every week by builders and people that, have my age group, has got adult children, and of people that can't get houses and can't get land. And it's the builders. We've had a local builder actually withdraw from the Southwest region recently because they just haven't got land to build on.
Thank you.
All right, we might leave it there. Thank you. If there's no other questions, councillors. Thank you, Kathy. Can I invite Mr Dennis Earnshaw up, please? Welcome, Dennis, in relation to Lot 401.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, councillors, Shire staff and everyone in the gallery. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak before you at the moment. So my name's Dennis and I do live in Meadow Landings, and I'm here on behalf of the Meadow Landing River Ridge community. Okay, so we've all been talking together and we've all been understanding what has been going on, and I'm here to present the perspective of the community. Let's get this working. So the community is simply asking that the council accept the recommendation of the officers, okay? The officers' recommendation, apologies. And with that, I'll just explain why the community would like you to accept the officers' recommendation. But first, the community is a little bit concerned, and so are we, in terms of the applicant's position, okay? So we ask ourselves some questions. Why couldn't the applicant submit a modified plan in accordance with council decision? Why is the applicant continually discussing sewage, on-site treatment, sewage, when wastewater treatment is a commercial matter that ultimately is a price paid by the purchaser? So Mr Gartrell just mentioned $1 million under the Forest Highway, 50 houses, 20 grand. Is that unreasonable to add to the price of a property? It's a commercial matter. Why is the applicant continually discussing housing supply when Treendale East meets all these requirements and demands? Is this misdirection? Is this aimed at taking our attention away from the core decisions? The focus needs to be on confirming the suitable density code and the incorporation of transition lots. So let's move on. To appreciate the community voice, let's have a quick look at how we got to where we are. So the applicant proposed a residential development for lot 401, looks like this, have had a high density, which is inconsistent with the local planning strategy. So Meadow Landing community had an overwhelming singular response, wrong design for this established community. So council heard our voices, 6-3, to accept the officer's recommendation for modification of the LSP. But what are we modifying it to? Two things. Reduce the density to a mix of R.25 and R5 and ensure that there is a transition from existing lots. Now, there was a multitude of concerns that the community had on the LSP. So why was it just these two modifications that were important? Transition, it's vitally important. It creates that cohesiveness with our existing well-established community, and the original proposed design ignored orderly and proper planning principles. It presented an abrupt, abrasive, overshadowing, privacy-infringing design. Now, we've been through all of this before, so I'm not going to hold you up through this. So then we had the modified concept layout. And the community, we all got together and said, what is this? And we understood that this is not a structure plan, but this was a concept of what the council's decision potentially could look like. Words, a picture paints 1,000 words is what they say, and so this is what it did. And so the concept layout creates that cohesiveness, blending seamlessly into our well-established community. It alleviates the concern of our amenity being eroded, alleviates concerns of privacy, security, overshadowing, and conflicting lifestyles. So with one modification, 6 major concerns disappear. Transition. So why was it important that we reduce the density to a mix of R2.5 and R5? So the R2.5 and R5, I understand that's half acre, 1 acre lots. So that's consistent and compatible with our mature existing community. Seamless integration and transition. So if we had a development that took that density code of R2.5 and R5, it would actually enrich the existing community. It would be a continuity of identity, lot designs, house designs. So the modification proposes a density and scale of development expected by the Shire of Harvey local planning strategy and supported by our community. So I'm going to keep saying that a few times, the local planning strategy. It's important. So let's talk about the local planning strategy. To have orderly and proper planning, we first need to have a strategy. That is the Shire of Harvey local planning strategy. So bear with me, it's going to take a little bit of a moment just to draw these conclusions together. So it's not just a local document, but it's reviewed and endorsed by the West Australian Planning Commission. So this strategy is aligned at state government level. It's not just us. This is the whole state saying this strategy looks good. So together at state level and local level, this document provided a strategy for Lot 401. It was to be low density and the special residential zoning to convert to an appropriate or suitable density code. Remember those words. They're used by a few people. Appropriate and suitable density code. The strategy outlines that appropriate density code for this area was an R2.5 R5. At state planning level, local planning level and community level, Lot 401 has been strategically planned to have low density R2.5 R5, always. So the proposed LSP is at odds with the community, at odds with the local planning strategy and the West Australian Planning Commission endorsement. So then we have the Shire of Harvey Local Planning Scheme number 2. So we've got the strategy and now we've got the scheme. And it intended to have Lot 401 zoned residential with a density code of R5. That's consistent with the Meadow Landing River Reach community. Now, we know this from the officer's report, as well as documentation provided under the Freedom of Information Act. We know that the West Australian Planning Commission supported Council's decision that the Lot 401 should have a density code of R5. However, the Minister made a determination. And many think that it is at odds with the West Australian Planning Commission and the Shire of Harvey. But that determination was not at odds. And I'll explain why. So the Minister made the determination to change the zoning to urban development. It's a stepping stone, not a final zoning. The Minister's reasons for the determination were, so let me just quote what they said, due to potential availability of reticulated sewage to the site. Great, let's go and explore it. To enable comprehensive consideration of servicing requirements. Yep, absolutely. Let's delve into it, see what that new development will require. Suitable residential density, there's that word again. Visual and acoustic buffering to the forest highway, noise wall, noise bund. Connectivity and interface with existing development. We've talked about interface. And other relevant planning considerations. So this is what the Minister was expecting. The Minister did not make a determination for the density to exceed that outlined within the local planning strategy. There is no determination saying it's high density, lower density. He made no determination on the density code. That is within the local planning strategy, being R2.5, R5. Now this statement of here that he did not make that determination is supported by the Minister's second determination, that the modifications to the local planning scheme number 2 are not substantial and therefore the scheme does not need to be re-advertised. Not substantial. Had the Minister expected the density to be substantially changed, as proposed under this LSP, to go to R30 or R20, it would have been re-advertised. Now we've seen the reaction of the applicant's proposed density within the community. Changing the density is substantial and not aligned with the Minister's determination. So the local planning scheme number 2 expected the LSP to respect and adopt the Shire of Harvey local planning strategy for this lot, being low density with a suitable density code of R2.5, R5. The Minister did not say it was going to be higher. Crystal? Crystal, could you just jump that across? Back one, please. Oh, look at that, it's working again. Thank you. So with the density of R2.5 and R5, it alleviates most concerns from the community. It maintains the amenity that the community enjoys. It minimises traffic, creates common lifestyles, common property designs, common house designs, a unified community identity. It conforms with the state-endorsed Shire of Harvey local planning strategy. A lower density design is orderly and proper. Meadow Landing and surrounding areas along Raymond Road have been strategically planned to create a unique diversity of developments. Treendale East has that large cohesive development using proper design and planning principles to provide high quality, high density living. 2,200 homes, over 5,000 residents, lots ranging from 180 square metres up to 400 square metres. Meadow Landing is that in between, provides that opportunity of 2,000 to 4,000 square metres. It's in a semi-rural environment. And now to the east of Wilman-Wadandi Highway is the planned development for 1 hectare to 4 hectare lots, giving more space for those who desire it. So such a diverse range of housing land options in this area is a testament to the local planning strategy. Remember, Meadow Landing, including Lot 401, was always planned to be low density. So the officer's recommendation details accurately the matter it's at hand and follows orderly and proper planning process. The local planning strategy is clear. Lot 401 is low density. The local planning scheme number 2, when read with the local planning strategy, is clear. Develop with density code R2.5, R5. Meadow Landing River Ridge community want 401 developed to be a part of our community. There is a path forward to realise this opportunity, and our community has that singular voice. Accept the officer's recommendation. So we do thank you very much for your service to our community and the dedication to making good planning decisions. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dennis. Councillors, Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Dennis. How you doing?
Good.
So a question, you sitting in the gallery and you heard Mr Gartrell suggest that if sewer wasn't required, he would be happy with 50 lots at R5. Is that something that the River Ridge community would be acceptance if we were to find that as a middle ground going forward?
We have all spoken within the community that half-acre lots we have no issues with. Yep.
So if we were to propose, for example, that if the WA Planning Commission determined that sewer was not required, then 50 by R5 lots would be developed, would be acceptable?
Our concern is ensuring that there is a clear decision path for developers going forward for Lot 401 that ensures that whatever the outcome is, it's clear that it's the same and cohesive and same identity as Meadow Landings, not something else.
I agree. I'm just trying to see if there's a way forward with this. If council decided that would be some sort of amendment or something, that would be acceptable.
So our community supports the concept of R2.5, R5.
R5.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, councillors? No? Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
All right, councillors, we'll move into the officers' reports. So 5.1.1, which is the Southwest Country Zone meeting. Noting the minutes from the Welcome Southwest Country Zone. Are there any questions? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor McCarthy, can you put on your microphone? Thank you.
Thank you.
There were some presentations. One was from telecommunications from Telstra from Boyd Brown. I was just wondering if we could hear if there was anything about the issues that were raised just in line with community concerns about telecommunications, if anything could be shared.
That was predominantly around local government areas located down further south, so Manjimup Way. They have been liaising with Telstra in looking at improving the network support. I don't think there was anything further than that. So in regards to local area, no. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you. I'll move on to 5.1.2, which is the sector consultation electoral reforms discussion paper. So councillors, this is just adopting a council position to assist WELGA with their discussion paper and preparing a local government position. So are there any questions? I'll firstly take, are there any questions in relation to going to a 4-year term as opposed to a 2-year term? I just had one question. The report refers to increased costs in advertising, printing, postage and staff costs, and the review of strategic planning documents such as our corporate plan if we go to a 4-year term. So would the CEO, do you see that as being a significant cost going to 4-year term as opposed to staying at the 2-year term?
Just pass on to the Manager of Government.
Sure, through the chair. I think generally we'd see a reduction in cost for the management of the election, provided that it was still voluntary voting. But in terms of the plans, they would just go through the same cycle.
Process.
Yeah.
So there's not really a significant cost associated going from a 2 to a 4-year term administratively?
Administratively, I'd say it would likely be a reduction in cost, provided that it's still voluntary. Of course, if it was 4-yearly and mandatory voting, then the return and counting of all those votes obviously comes with a greater expense.
Okay. Are there any other questions just in relation to the 4-year term versus 2-year term? Councillor Bromham?
Yeah, the 4-year term, we're talking about a complete spill and the training of councillors after that. Now, given that often a lot of councillors are returned anyway, I just wondered what the thoughts were of staff in relation to the cost of that and how they would manage it.
Through the chair, so I'm pretty sure the regulations provide that the councillors have to do the mandatory training every 5 years anyway, so the cost would be the same.
Any other questions in relation to 2 versus 4-year term? All right, let's move on to the second part of that, which is the compulsory voting. Are there any questions in relation to moving towards compulsory voting as opposed to not compulsory, voluntary voting? We supported voluntary voting, yeah, in the report. Councillor Bromham?
I'm guessing this, but I'm thinking, well, if we go to compulsory voting would make sure that more people would vote. But obviously, what would be the cost in relation to that? That's the only concern I have from the point of view of compulsory voting.
So it's the return of the ballots. So generally, local governments with a very good turnout would get around 30%. If it's mandatory, obviously there's a cost to processing those when they come in. We did make a comment in there that we had previously sent a letter in regards to Councillor Carboni's notice of motion to move to electronic voting. So we've included that in our response as well. That would obviously significantly reduce the processing of ballots, but it's really just about counting them when they get back.
And South West Walga Zone has supported that recommendation to Walga to investigate online voting. Yeah, and I think the City of Bentley is investigating that as well. So it's taken a bit of courage. Councillor Carboni.
But realistically speaking, to have compulsory voting, you'd have to have polling booths in every town and manned by staff in every town in the Shire.
Good question.
Through the chair, if you did in-person voting, but you could still have a compulsory vote with a postal election as well. So it would be up to council to determine how many polling places. I think the legislation says you must have at least one. So.
All right, any other questions, councillors, in relation to this? No, thank you. We'll move on to item 5.1.3, which is the Model Code of Conduct for councillors. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you. My understanding is that should this be adopted, that staff would be able to modify the policy. I wonder if the policy could be extracted and brought back to council for review before it's adopted by staff.
Yeah, I was going to raise the same question, so through to you.
Through the chair, we can. My suggestion perhaps would be that we insert this requirement administratively as the report suggests, and then we can still bring the policy back to council, and I would be happy to do that before the end of the financial year. If we don't insert these more immediately, it will make it difficult if we get behavioural complaints in the interim. But I'm more than happy to review the policy given the changes, and that was probably likely our intention anyway, considering the cost of independent assessors and processing complaints is increased. Yeah.
So we could make an amendment to the officer's recommendation that the policy come back to council for review.
Yes, through the chair, and that would be doing these changes and then
embed these changes first, and we'll endorse these changes and then embed those changes, because there may be other changes that we want to make over time as well. All right, any other questions, councillors? Thank you. Infrastructure services, 5.2.1, the Harvey Quindanning Road Project Viability Review. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Madam President. I totally understand the economics of this. I get it, and it's not our land. But some people in the community brought to my attention that Mornington Road and Honeymoon Road were similarly done. So I would need to take advice from that because they go through state forests. And the issue is that is paramount in the community's mind is what happens if the Quindanning Road becomes unsafe? Is our Shire people and our local representatives still going to be looking after it? So, like I said, I understand the mechanics of it, understand the finances, and Director Craig was really good at outlining that at the last meeting. But I'd like to just confirm whether or not we've already did Mornington Road and whether or not that was ours, and Honeymoon Road and whether or not that was ours. And then what happens if the Harvey Quindanning Road becomes unsafe immediately after our sealed section?
Through the CEO to...
Through the chair, Mornington Road, I believe some of it is ours, not all of it. I'm not a Harvey resident, so I confess I'm not 100% sure. Honeymoon Road, again, I'm sorry, I don't even know where that is. I would need to take that notice and check that. And if it becomes unsafe, part of this will be notifying DBCA that we're not doing the works and they're responsible. I would, and this is just a guess, I would suspect we'll end up in negotiations about who looks after it, management orders or something along the lines. But ultimately it's their land and they would be responsible for looking after it. The vehicles per day is around about 50 a day. So it is relatively low traffic as well. And it has been maintained up to now.
Thank you.
Council, I did have something there about authorising the CEO to amend the for capital works, but I see that's already in there to reflect the removal. That's all I have. Any other questions? Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you. So if this is taken off our management program, is there the potential to still have discussions with the owners in the future to improve the road, so therefore the traffic would increase as well? Because one of the reasons why the traffic numbers are low is because of the condition of the road. If it was a road in better condition, it would have much higher usage, and a perfect example of that is Mornington Road. The amount of traffic that has increased on that road since it's been improved is very significant. So I have a concern that if we take roads off our management program, I don't want them forgotten about. I still want them to be in discussions for future development, for the potential tourism and economic development of the Shire.
So do you have a question,
So,
Councillor Dickinson?
Are they going to still be in negotiations with the relevant parties for future improvement?
Through the chair, I believe, and I can just double check, that part of it will be negotiating with DBCA to see what they want to do. I'm not sure what their plans are. Ultimately, the land tenure belongs to them, so it will all rest with them. I suspect, and again, I've already said, but I suspect they will discuss with us about future works. So it's not completely removed. It's removed for now, because even if we decided to do it, we're at least a year away from starting. So.
Perhaps they could give us significant funding.
Again, I can only guess, but I suspect not.
I suspect not as well. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. So based on the Director's response then, so the funding that we have, the grant funding that we have, will that have to be refunded straight away, or should we be having these discussions prior to making a formal decision to discontinue?
And through the chair, the grant funding is different. The grant funding comes from the regional road group, which is MRWA, Main Roads WA, whereas DBC are completely separate. So negotiations will be with Department of Biodiversity. The money will be returned to the regional road group, which goes into a pool, and obviously we will make an application to use that for something else which we believe is a higher priority.
Thank you.
So hopefully we won't lose that funding. It'll be...
Hopefully not. We've got a couple of things that,
Yep.
once the decision's made, that we're going to probably apply for, but I can't do anything right now until it's
Lovely.
decided.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to 5.2.2, bicycle repair stations. Any questions? Councillor Hitchcock.
Yep, I've just got a couple. I note that the quotation was obtained prior to the motion being voted on. So was that the only quotation that was obtained?
I didn't work here when the quotation was obtained, but I believe that was the only one, yes.
Okay. The report doesn't identify any areas within the Shire, but a quotation for 4 stations was obtained. Where did that figure come from?
Again, I'll do my best to answer. I wasn't here, but I believe there was a number of potential locations identified. So they took 4 as a nominal number, where I think there was 5 or 6 locations identified potentially where they could go.
Okay, that was my next question. What were those locations?
I'd need to come back to you. I can't remember offhand.
Okay.
There was a variety of locations across the Shire, so I can't remember offhand.
Okay,
We'll take that one on notice.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Okay, we'll move on to 5.2.3, which is the FOGO update. So I just note, councillors, if we need to go behind closed doors, if we start talking about pricing and the like, but happy to take questions, general questions. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. So just like to be clear for the public record that can we be confident that contaminants within the Harvey Shire can be clearly identified rather than as beforehand we have discovered that pools of waste have had contaminants in it, which may or may not have come from the Harvey Shire. And what is the likely outcome at the end of the rebate period? Does that go back to full costing as disclosed in the report? Do we have to revert to a two-bin system then, if there is no long-term FOGO processing facility within the southwest region?
Okay, so two questions about the contamination rate. What happens after the rebate period finishes and there's no solution locally? Mr. Hayden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to answer the first part, the second part I'll probably leave for a bit later to answer. The contamination is quite clear from each local government when the waste collection vehicle arrives, and that assessment will be undertaken from when it arrives on site as part of the proposal. Unfortunately, we don't have, as it's only a proposal at this point in time, we haven't gone down to the fine details about how each local government's contamination and then the process will be down to the, say, a contract style and charging mechanism. I would say that the next stage of things would be working through those descriptions and getting a scope of works that would then provide the detail of how it would be calculated. My understanding, if any contractor was to be the source of where the FOGO material is collected and where it arrives on site, then how that would be processed and taken to another site, then you'll lose track of where the contamination comes from that point. So the tracking mechanism will be when the vehicle arrives and when the load arrives, but the specifics of how that is identified to each load hasn't quite been worked out because it's only a proposal at this point in time. Second part of the question, I probably would say it is one of the, once the rebate has passed, which has been committed to September 2028, we haven't been given any further direction about if there's going to be the continuation of any further subsidy from the state government. So at this point in time, we can only go off the information we've been provided, and probably that will be left in the council's decision about where the future of FOGO is for the Shire of Harvey and what the waste collection services will be moving forward.
Mr. Jones, I'll come to you, Councillor Bronwyn. Mr. Jones, the report says the Shire of Dardanup has a potential proposal viable within 3 months. Do we know anything about that one?
I think that's a proposal, that's one of the confidential attachments to this report.
Okay.
That's the one they're making reference to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bronwyn?
Yeah, I was wondering whether we should move behind closed doors so we could actually discuss the costs to our ratepayers. Well, staff want a direction. I think we need to discuss costs so that they can actually get that direction they want.
It's a question-only session, so...
Oh, I understood that earlier on they
No, if
wanted to know our
there's
feeling.
questions about the costings that have been provided, then yes, but only questions, we're not debating it. At this stage, we will just take general questions in relation to FOGO. Yeah. Councillor Carboni.
So obviously if the Harvey Shire, as was said earlier, if the Harvey Shire or the City of Bunbury pull out of FOGO, the whole thing collapses in the southwest. Have we had any indication from the City of Bunbury yet?
CEO.
Only confidential discussions that have been held with the local governments, so it's not information that I would want to share in a public setting.
All right, I know the CEO's here to provide advice to councillors as we make the decision, but what do you think we should do?
Maybe we do need to go behind closed doors.
Madam President, can I just perhaps call a point of order on that? We're actually not allowed to ask for opinion.
Yeah.
So I think
I would like to.
I understand Councillor Carboni's question, but I urge caution. We're not allowed to ask for opinion from each other or staff.
May I say though that the state government is very proactive and in maintaining FOGO within the southwest. So that's why they've accommodated the rebate, and they are very keen for the local government, southwest local governments, to find a solution, whether it be in 2 years' time. So that's the challenge I see for the local governments. CEO, did you want to add to that without offering an opinion?
I was only going to advise council that it is council's decision and that the officer's recommendation, which I have authorised, is in the council report.
Good answer, CEO. There we go. Mr Jones, in regard to the report, it says that the local governments submit verified data on FOGO tonnages. So how will this be managed, and is this actually manageable by our staff?
Through the chair, nice easy question there. It's pretty manageable based on the data that comes through from the vehicles that arrive. So they're all tracked through a weighbridge when they arrive on site. So we'll be the data that would be provided would be based from a weighbridge recording from whatever site that would be successful in a contract. From there, then that waste tonnages will be referred to each local government and itemised. So currently there's waste services providers that do that now for all our waste services. We utilise Cleanaway for our general waste, and there's multiple different local governments that arrive there from using Cleanaway's vehicles, other waste collection contractors, and they gather that data and record it against each local government. So it's a pretty easy process to record.
Okay. My last question is, the report says it presents a potentially achievable short-term option. What could cause it not to be achievable? And is PFAS a game changer for this moving forward?
Through the chair, I probably might let the last question, I'll probably won't be able to answer that one at this point in time. It is achievable, like any solution for any challenge, it's always achievable, there's always a solution. The challenge we do have is every solution has its challenges, and one of the challenges we do have, yeah, I should be a planner, shouldn't I? One of the challenges we do have is there's a financial challenge. There's also a logistic challenge with the complexities of developing tenders and contracts in short time frames. There's also a cooperation working with other local government challenges. So everything is always achievable. There is a solution that's been presented to the Shire of Dardanup as a potential option, but there's also other challenges that come with every solution. The second question, I think that may also be not just a Western Australia issue, it's a challenge across Australia with PFAS as a developing issue within the waste industry, but it's also a developing issue across a lot of products that are utilised around the world. So I don't think it's just isolated to FOGO, specifically in our southwest. It's actually an issue across the whole of the world. It's probably just the concentration of the material is the problem and the challenges you do have.
Alrighty, any other questions, councillors? Big decision. So if you do have any other questions during the week, please direct them through the CEO if you're seeking some further clarification before next week. Thank you, Mr Jones. I nearly sang that, didn't I? Alrighty. 5.2.4, provision of new playground equipment for Yarloop, Binningup and Treendale. An addendum has been added to attachment number 1. So do we have any questions, councillors, in relation to either or all of these tenders? No, all good. It's great to see some upgrades and new playgrounds, so that's good moving forward. Okay, we'll move into sustainable development. 5.3.1, proposed road renaming, Wickham Road, Yarloop. This has been a very interesting report to read. Yeah, so are there any questions, councillors, in relation to this one? No? Yep, Councillor Coleman. I could see you thinking there. So.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I'm just wondering, considering the report and the submissions about the existing Wickham Road, why would we not go to Vivian Wickham Road so that some of it is still there rather than rename the whole road altogether just Vivian Road? Because we're also recommending that Montague Wickham be named as a road, and Vivian Wickham does meet all the what do you call these things? Yep, criteria. Yep. So just wondering why we would call it Vivian Road and not Vivian Wickham Road in honour of that person.
Yep.
Through the chair, thank you for your question. So the Landgate's naming policy would prefer only one name. They can extend it to two, but we'd have to put that to Landgate as a suggestion if it can be done, similar to all the other names. So it's usually just one, but we can ask if we want.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, because the other one that we're actually approving is Montague Wickham. That's a two name. So I'm suggesting maybe we could look at it perhaps, Vivian Wickham Road.
So through the chair again, we can do that. We can ask.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Any other questions? No, and we've all learnt how to go through that renaming of roads process. Very interesting. Alrighty, 5.3.2, proposed structure plan for lot 401 Forest Highway Rowlands. A couple of deputations this afternoon. So are there any further questions, councillors, in relation to this one? Mr Earnshaw can go home then if there's not. Councillor Coleman.
I guess probably through to staff, if given both existing residents and the landowner have suggested that 50 R5 lots would be developed if the WA Planning Commission determined that sewer was not required. I'm just wondering if there's an appetite from the staff to perhaps put in an alternative recommendation in there that as a first off criteria, that if WA Planning Commission doesn't require sewer, given that seems to be the middle ground moving forward for both residents and landowner. Is that possible?
You go, Mr Hughes, but I think on the governance side of things, I just have to check that staff have already put forward a officer's recommendation. If there was an alternate, then council can put that forward next week. Maybe you could ask the CEO to assist in wording for that one, unless you felt you could provide further information, Mr Hughes. Yep.
And so through the chair again, the application process as it is on a specific course, as in you've got the officer's recommendation in front of you. It goes off to WAPC. Now, I don't want to put words in WAPC's mouth and make any recommendations what they may or may not do. The applicant will be taking this application to them and afforded the opportunity to bring that proposition to them. So that's the first we've heard of the change in direction from the applicant was this afternoon. So I'd be hesitant to advise to probably make a change at this stage. That's my advice at this point in time. Obviously, we'll have to go off and have a chat with staff and revisit it. But at this point in time, you have a recommendation in front of you.
Thank you, Mr Hughes. Any other follow-up? Yes, Councillor.
So, Madam President, would you still like me to send something through to the CEO, or should we wait for the Director to give some advice?
CEO.
I would suggest that the advice can be provided and then you can make a decision as to whether you put forward an alternative motion.
Any other questions, councillors? All good? Okay. 5.4 corporate services, 5.4.1, which is the budget review 25-26. We did workshop this one, councillors. So are there any further questions? Councillor Coleman?
I'd just like to thank Mr Winters for providing, I'd asked for a report on the non-material differences in the budget, which of course is under 30,000, and of course that comes out at nearly $100,000 that we don't need to really hear about. I'm just wondering if council is aware that, you know, that there's another $100,000, some of which are, you know, $20,000 variances, but because they're under 30,000, we don't necessarily need to understand them. So did that go, Mr Winter, did that go to all councillors?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, it did go to all councillors, and it wasn't me that produced it, it was Mr Chopra, the Manager of Finance.
Would you pass on our congratulations to him, please? He's fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions, councillors? No, and well done on the work done, Mr Winter and your crew. Thank you. 5.4.2, payments for February 2026. I think Councillor Dickinson, you sent some through that you've got some responses to.
Yes, thank you. I had queries of 3 payments. Well, the first one was CP 37 105 to 106, which was a Panetta lawn mowing. So I was just wondering why a contractor was doing that instead of Shire staff.
Through you, Madam President. Staff weren't available at the time to do those works, and Panetta lawnmowers were close proximity, and it was cost effective for us to use them for the works there, the SES area.
Thank you. And I appreciate the answer and the clarification, especially in the use of more specialised equipment being required as well at the Peter Topper Memorial Pool. My next question was CP 37130, temporary fencing at the Station Master's house. And the reason that I asked this question, I just sought clarification because I'd been told by a community member that they had been told that the Shire had bought fencing and were no longer hiring it. So I was just sought clarification on that item.
Yes, the Shire has purchased temporary fencing. We retain those fencings up at the depot and use them at different sites like this one in the payments, and they've also been used at the hall here, Harvey Town Hall, and it is cost effective, yes.
Thank you. And my final one was CP 3987, which was MPS plumbing for the Rowlands Hall gas barbecue. And my query was, is there no working barbecue available in the community for use at the Rowlands Hall? So I just sought clarification on that.
The information provided to me is that there is currently no working barbecues available at the Rowlands Hall. The existing units were old, leaking, and couldn't safely be turned off, and so they've been decommissioned. Staff's next step is to provide some freestanding barbecues and gas so that amenity can be made available to the community.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Madam President. I just have one, and that was CP 36.71. It's for photography services at the Homegrown Heroes Community Awards. But we've just advertised, we've just opened them. We've just opened those awards. So just wondering.
Might have been a late invoice from the photographer, I'm guessing, but Mr Winter, yeah.
Mr Chopra might be able to answer that one for us.
Thank you. Welcome, Sunil. There you go.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, you're right. It was a late invoice. They have been very slow in invoicing us, so it was for the last year's one.
They must be making too much money as a photographer. My husband asked me what I was going to do with my spare time. I might become a photographer, like Mr. Jones. Okay, are there any other questions in relation to payments, councillors? All right, we'll move on to financial statements as at the 28th of February 2026. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. Just looking for some guidance here, perhaps. On page 554 of our attachments, it looks like our total loan funds were 15 million, or potential for this coming year, 15,670,000, but our cash at bank is 16,932,000, leaving only a $1.2 million buffer somewhat. Are we sort of, is that usual, and are we quite comfortable if all of those loans were called in, if they were taken and called in? And I do appreciate that they haven't all been taken up as yet, but if they were all called in, would that actually only leave us $1.2 million in the bank?
I'll go to Mr. Winter, or he's looking at Sunil. So either one, are you in a position to answer?
I believe we're in a fine position cash flow wise. However, I wouldn't mind taking that question on notice before giving a complete answer, unless Sunil, you wanted to add anything.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. So the loan is not given against the cash balances. Loan is given against the future income which Shire is going to draw from rates, from fees and charges, from various grants. So, for example, if you look into the a personal loan, you might not have $10 in your account, but if you want to buy a property, the bank will be willing to lend you money based on your future income projections and the value of the assets as such. So it's not against the cash you have in the bank, it's against your future incomes or fees and charges where the loan is given to you. And yeah, so it's a 20-year loan, and we have to repay, most of the loans are 20 years loans, so we have to repay in 20 years. All they look into is, do we have the capacity to repay the loan in next 20 years? Do we have that enough income available? But not on the cash balances as such.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Any other questions, councillors? All right, we'll move on to notice of motion for the following meeting, and we have Councillor Carboni's water feature at the Brunswick Pool. Brunswick River Pool, no, water drinking fountain. Are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Coleman.
I commend Councillor Carboni for his motion. I'm just querying because we've heard earlier today how if we take on one project, another might have to be foregone, A, for funding, and B, for staff resourcing. So just querying through staff the capacity to be able to fund and deliver this. And yes, I understand it's not super big money, but do we have the funding, the financial and staff capacity to add yet another project at this very point in time?
Mr. Yardley.
Through the chair, I would suggest it's relatively small. We don't have budget for it right now, but part of that would be applying for budget and putting in a little hard stand, because I haven't investigated it in great detail. We just put something together quite quickly. But part of that recommendation would be I'd look into it a little bit more, and I'd be able to give more information, but I'd suggest it's relatively small.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, councillors. Matters behind closed doors, nil. Being no more further questions, I declare the agenda briefing meeting closed, and thank you for your participation.